Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hi, Michelle, Ruben.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning to class.
We're lucky to have some folks here in the room with me, so that's really nice. Yeah, I'm your loyal student. That's right. Okay, so I'm ready whenever you are to get going.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's having a fabulous Friday. Today, Michelle, you're going to be going over the grid, I believe, on the RPA, or is it the
No, I'm
damage?
I want to make a distinction on the liquidated damages between residential and commercial. Then I'm going to go back to residential because I didn't have time last time I was teaching to do this and show what the statutory disclosures are.
Okay, and
So,
then I'm going to go over the CCPA at the end. And without further ado, Michelle, if you want to go ahead and get started.
all right. Good morning, everyone. So last time I was teaching the grid and we were touching on the liquidated damages. I didn't have a chance to complete because the class went over a bit. So as we all know from the prior class that for residential, liquidated damage is 3% of the purchase price or the amount that is already deposited into escrow, but no more than 3%, providing it's 1 to 4 units. And at the time of the offer, the buyer intended to occupy a unit. So we went over that pretty much in depth last a couple weeks ago. So I want to make sure we'll be teaching the commercial contract, but since I touched on liquidated damage on residential, I want to touch on commercial because it's a different setup. So this is from the commercial contract. So if you look at the liquidated damages in the commercial contract, it's going to be the seller shall retain as liquidated damages the deposit actually paid. We don't have a cap in commercial. So I wanted to make sure that I addressed this since I talked about liquidated damage a bit last time. So make sure that you understand the difference. So let's say you had a purchase and your buyer put in 100,000, then that can be the liquidated damages. And here, as a listing agent, especially on commercial, since there's no cap, we talked about the DID form, which brings in the additional deposit. Especially here, if your client, if you're representing the seller and the buyer is bringing in some additional initial deposit, make sure that that is brought in and initial signed off through the DID, so that will become part of the liquidated damages as we discussed last week. The same goes for residential. However, bear in mind, even if you brought in over 3% on the DID form, and you checked it as part of the liquidated damages on residential, it will cap. On commercial, it will not. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood the distinction and that nobody was confused by that. So I have 3 sections today that are distinctly on their own. Before I move to the next section of statutory disclosures for residential, does anybody have a question? Okay, is there a
Is there? I don't see the screen.
You can't see it?
Only the thank you for using Lone Wolf, and that's it.
Okay,
I don't know if anybody else has the same problem.
okay, hold on. We'll get it.
Can you see the screen?
Here, I'm gonna get out of Edgar's way.
But if it's a, let me check.
Okay, I'll get out of the way because ours is showing it's up.
Ruben,
Yeah,
can you see the screen?
I can see her screen.
Oscar, can you see her screen?
Okay, so you got to go back, left to the transaction tab. She's sharing the wrong screen.
Oh, you're sharing.
That's about the lone wolf.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
want
let me
to
work.
share what I put up.
Yeah, 1 second. Okay, how about now?
There you
Yeah,
go.
now,
Yeah,
now
now it's
better.
okay.
Yeah, now it's
Yeah.
okay
Okay,
now.
so,
Okay,
we
that's
are
good.
on the commercial contract. Just remember, on commercial, there's no cap on the liquidated damages. So since we discussed it a couple weeks ago, I just didn't want to leave that hanging. We will get into the commercial contract, but I want, in case you're doing deals, that you understand the difference between liquidated damages for commercial versus residential. So before I move to the next section, are there any questions on liquidated damages? From anybody? You want to speak up or put them in the chat box?
Remember if yeah, either party didn't sign the liquidated damage or didn't initial the liquidated damage, then you have to sue the
Yeah.
seller or actually the buyer for actual damages, okay? And then you have to go to court. And liquidated damage is much easier. You don't have to prove actual damage. That's the distinction.
Good question. Do they both buyer and seller need to initial so it
Yes,
to
yes, you have to be.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Paul, I'm not sure if we mentioned it last, couple weeks ago, but there has been cases where a buyer executed on a counter and had signed the liquidated damages, but failed to get the full contract back from the seller's agent prior to opening escrow, and there was no initials on the liquidated damages. So you need to, when us as agents, if we're gonna, you know, if we're that close to opening escrow, make sure you have that full contract back, because if your buyer initialed that liquidated damages and expects it to be included in the contract, you want to verify that the seller did indeed initial, because if you sign that counter, this contract with the counter without the initials goes in, there could be an issue because there's only one party signing. So that would mean that liquidated damages wasn't, you know, valid. However, there could be an argument that it was. So just make sure that the seller does return the full contract. You definitely want to make sure everybody's initialed the liquidated damages if that was your buyer's intent. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
So are there any other questions while we've got everybody here to answer them? Because I'll be moving on. Okay, so again, the commercial contract has not been gone over in a while. We will be bringing that up, or any of your other, you know, things that you want to discuss, just let us know and we'll try to incorporate that into all of the training. So the commercial, I just pulled this up, the commercial seller property questionnaire. So this is a fairly new, so this does go with the commercial deals now. And if you look at paragraph 6, these are statutorily required questions to be answered. You also, of course, would provide an NHD. The commercial earthquake booklet is not required. I believe it's 19 for buildings built after 1975. However, in some of the training that I've been recently engaged in, that booklet, that commercial real estate booklet, offers so much information that it's a good idea if you could get the receipt signed that everybody received it. So it's not a bad booklet to be giving out, and it's you can do it downloadable. Okay. So we will be going over commercial later. So now I'm going to go back so I don't confuse people. I'm back on residential, and I want to make sure that we all understand, because when you're new, maybe you haven't gone over anything like this, but there are certain disclosures that are statutory, and they do that. What that means is they come with rescission rights. So they're not all of the disclosures, but there's some of them, and they're listed in our residential purchase agreement in 11A, B, C, and D. So I want to show you what the statutory disclosures are and go over the rescission rights. And I'm sure Peter will have something to say on that as well. So your transfer disclosure statement, TDS, is statutory. Fire hardening and defensible space, if it's applicable, and you will check your NHD report to see if that property is in a high fire zone or very high or very high fire zone, then this form would be applicable. Your natural hazard disclosure statement is a statutory, and the SPQ Or if the seller is exempt and they won't be filling out the SPQ, the ESD exempt seller disclosure, the special tax / assessments, which will include Mello-Roos. Now, you don't have a specific disclosure for that. However, that will be located in your NHD, which I prefer to look for it in, or your preliminary title report. So the NHD will have a nice layout of the taxes and special assessments. So you can cover that requirement by having the NHD. As we always say, get that report early. Now, lead-based paint disclosure form is for properties built before 1978. That is a statutory requirement. Now, why is it important to know about this? Because the statutory disclosures do come with some rescission rights. So let's say you went, oops, I didn't give them that lead-based paint, and it is applicable, and you were really late in giving it. Well, now those certain disclosures come with rescission rights, and these are the ones. What does that mean? If you hand delivered it, the buyer has 3 days after your hand delivery to review that disclosure. If you emailed it or mailed it, they have 5 days after such delivery. So it doesn't mean that, let's say that all the disclosures are removed, but you hand delivered one of these statutory disclosures late, then you've created a additional days. Now, they don't have to sign off on it. If you deliver it to them and they don't say anything, there's no issue, there's no further sign off, even if, you know, they've removed all their contingencies. But you want to make sure you get this out. So, which brings me to, so if you want to know what makes a seller exempt, we'll go over that in a bit, but I want to show the real estate transfer disclosure statement, which we know from the above list is a statutory disclosure required. So I'm going to come to the back, right back here where we have to fill it out. So to be completed, if the seller is represented by an agent, agent's inspection disclosure. So normally on our form, our TDS, we advise the agents to check CAVID. So AVID technically is not a statutorily required form, but if you bring it into this TDS and you did not deliver it with the TDS, they now can wait for you to complete this TDS, which would mean attaching that AVID. And by you, if you delivered it late, but you had already delivered the TDS, but it said it was attached and it wasn't, they still will get a rescission right because you didn't complete the form based on your check marks here. So does that make sense to everybody? Is there any questions? Or Peter, do you have anything to add?
I just want to add that the AVID form is not statutory required, but it's it's highly recommended and also required by the CBGR.
Peter,
Yeah,
I have a question. Even though it's not statutory, but the TDS is. So if the AVID is in the TDS, does that make it as statutory?
well, it's not statutory, but if you put a check mark there, that means if you don't give the AVID, that means you breach the contract of the TDS. It's disclosure.
So in a sense, it becomes statutory if you include it, right?
Well, technically, AVID is not statutory, but when you put it in the TDS, that
Right.
makes that AVID a part of a TDS. So if you give the TDS without the AVID, that means it's not complete. So
Right.
if the TDS is not complete, but yeah, you have disclosed disclosed the TDS as a statutory requirement, but it's not complete. So it's a different, that's just the difference.
Got it.
You see
Yeah,
what I
so-
mean? You have done your statutory duty to give the TDS, but the TDS is not complete by
Right.
itself. So that's a violation of the disclosure.
Does that make sense to everybody?
I have a question, Jeffrey.
Yeah, Jeffrey.
Yeah, the TDS is to be completed by the seller, and the A bid is to be completed by the listing agent, correct?
Yes,
That's right.
So, just to be sure that the TDS is complete, we should definitely, as an agent, complete that the A bid and attach that to the TDS to be complete.
No, you
Right.
have the option to check the box. If you
Oh,
didn't check the box, that
okay.
means you are not attaching the ABIT.
Okay, so if I don't want to attach the A bid, I don't check the box.
Yes, that's
the
correct.
TDS. So
That's correct. And
is
if you don't
simple,
check
simple.
it, it still satisfy your requirement of statutory disclosure of the TDS.
Okay.
Je-
Yeah.
Jeffrey, just to reiterate what you're asking, you can still do an avid, but you just don't incorporate it with your TDS by checking that box.
That's
Got
right.
you. Thank you. Just make it simple.
Make
Thank
it
you.
separate from the TDS.
Correct.
So again, just to simplify it, for layman's term, statutory, what you guys mean is that it's required? Is that the definition or the context of what you guys are sharing?
That
Yeah.
means it's required by this California Civil Code. It's
Okay, got it.
by the
I just looked,
statute, yeah.
I'm
That's
looking
all
for
it
the
means.
definition. I got the
Yeah.
definition. I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the way to think about it also, Paul, is when you think statutory, think rescission rights. Even if somebody had removed all their contingencies and you deliver one late, they still have rescission rights. So
And
that's-
statutory rescission rights. So you just get them out right away and then you don't have a problem.
Got it.
So just to finalize that, statutory is required by law and it comes with rescission rights.
Yes.
A question to I have a question to Michelle. Michelle,
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
Jeffrey, can you simplify? Can you simply define to us what is rescission means?
Oh, I'll let Peter, because go ahead, Peter.
Rescission, that means you want to cancel the contract or just to get out of it.
Yeah, rescind the
Okay.
contract.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, just to be sure.
Yeah.
Very simple. That's exactly what it means. We send it.
yeah.
Return.
Okay, so if there's other questions, we'll address them, but I just want to point back through the contract. Oh, that's okay. So here's where the statutory in paragraph 11, where the disclosures are referenced. So if you wanted to read a little more about it, I suggest you read paragraph 11. And there's your lead disclosure and fire home. And then I wanted to point this out. Waiver prohibited. You cannot waive statutory disclosures. So just make sure that you understand the difference between statutory and other disclosures. Statutory disclosures you cannot waive, okay? So I just wanted to show you where to read in the body of the contract if you want to read a little bit more about the statutory disclosures. Now I'm going to go up because I've mentioned quite a few times, like I said, we're in 3 sections here about items included and excluded from the sale in the residential purchase agreement. It's quite extensive of the items included in 9B. So I always suggest when you are taking a listing or when you're doing your disclosures with your client, make sure that you're looking over with them the items that will be included in the sale, because it includes things like window coverings, blinds, curtains, draperies, any material that is covering the windows. It's even including light bulbs, including smart bulbs. And here's one that we may not all know. It includes pool nets, pool covers. So when you're taking a listing, make sure that you understand in paragraph 9B what is included in the sale so that you know well ahead of time if the seller does not intend to leave one of these items or does not wish to, that you will put a big red note on your file to counter that out when you receive an offer and are preparing your counter. So I always say read 9B, but here it is right here, because there's a lot of things that are included that we wouldn't even think about. Okay. So just as a tip, a pro tip, read this with your client and make sure that they're willing to release all of those with the sale. They need to be left with the property. So are there any other questions? Because if not, we're going to move to Ruben with the CCPA, but we want to make sure on statutory and anything else that we've addressed so far, the questions are fully answered. And if there's not, then I'm going to move on to Ruben is going to discuss the CCPA. So I don't hear any further questions. So, okay, Ruben, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Michelle. Just, nobody has other questions regarding what Michelle covered? One thing I do want to add, when you're going over what is staying and what is going with your seller, make sure you go over it in depth, because there's been incidents where something is taken from the premise, or yeah, the seller took something and it wasn't documented. So what ended up happening is the agents, one or the other agents, would have to come up with a replacement for that. So just make sure that all parties are aware of what's staying with the sale and what's not staying with the sale.
Can they see this? Yeah.
All right. Do you have the CCPA up? Yeah, you do. So CCPA, what does that stand for? California Consumer Privacy Act. This was updated in 2020 and was in effect July of 2020. In lane terms, the CCPA provides and enhances consumer privacy rights and protections for California residents and consumers. The CCPA gives consumers more control over their personal information that is collected about them. Okay, so what are the rights for under the CCPA, right? A California consumer has a right to know what personal information has been collected, receive a copy of it, and also can request that information to be deleted. Okay. They have the right to know if the personal information has been sold and to whom. They also have the right to refuse sale, disclosure, or use of their information. Okay. They also cannot be discriminated against if they exercise their right not to disclose their information. So that's very important to know. So in short, what does it all mean, right? So the CCPA protects the rights of California consumers' personal information. That's what it's all about, is protecting their personal information. We know identity theft is out there. It's all over the place, and it's happening on a broad scale. So this regulates how they have the right to know how the data is collected. When I say data, their personal information, how it's collected and obtained, how it's being used and disclosed, if it's shared and to who it's being shared to. And lastly, if that information is being sold to a third party. Okay. A lot of times when you fill out credit applications, that information is being sold to third parties. So in real estate, right, the CCPA, during the process of selling, buying, or leasing real estate, this disclosure, the CCPA discloses to your client's personal information, which is collected and obtained and most likely shared with others for the purpose of completing the transaction. For example, if you as an agent are collecting your client's information, it all pertains to the purchase of, or actually selling, buying, or leasing real estate. And it will be, and most likely will be shared. So they have to acknowledge that too, because that information most likely is going to be shared with escrow, for like payoffs, and then also with title companies for the purpose of, like, let's say, for instance, SI, which is statement information. Okay. It's also important to know and to let your clients know that we as real estate professionals will never sell their personal information. Okay. Lastly, before we open it up for discussion, don't explain this form to your clients. just have knowledge about it and briefly describe to them it's for their protection and their rights for their personal information. There's also a URL that directs them to a website at the very bottom of the form. If you notice, Michelle, if you could show them that. And that will give them a better understanding of the form, their rights, and hopefully answer all their questions. But that's basically what a CCPA does. Okay. Peter, any questions or anything on that?
No, that's okay.
It's a simple form. Don't
Yeah.
overanalyze it. But it's for their protection and their rights. Any questions? All right. Well, I think
Oh.
that's it.
Can I make one more comment? Since we were talking about items included or excluded in the cell, if you look at paragraph 9, I think I addressed it a couple of weeks ago, but remember, if you've said in the agent remarks, for instance, on the MLS that the refrigerator or something is included, it has to be in the contract. So written things on the MLS, you need to bring them into the contract. If you notice on a listing agent has said that they're going to include the refrigerator, but you didn't ask for it on the contract, that's not a good thing. Make sure that anything that you want to stay or be excluded is asked for, even if it was documented on the MLS and the agent remarks. It needs to be pulled into the contract, because there's been cases where somebody thought the refrigerator was included, an agent, so they didn't document it into the contract, and that became an issue. So we just want to point that out, make sure that you are including it in the body of the contract and asking for it, rather than relying on remarks in the MLS, because that is not going to work. It needs to be brought into the contract. Okay?
I have a
Anything?
question. Michelle, I have a question.
Yeah.
Jeffrey.
Hi, Jeffrey.
Yeah, just to be clear, if there's a contradiction or issue between the what is listed in the MLS or described in the MLS and the contract says they want to exclude, you know, well, you know, some parts of the on the property, let's say, you know, a beautiful, you know, and then there is a contradiction with what is listed in MLS. I understand that the contract will prevail, correct?
Yes. Yes. Now, you know, you can get into, gee, they said they were leaving it, you know, the ethics of it. But the thing is that we have to remember as agents, the contract is that fully written contract. It's not going to include things that were written in marketing flyers or in agent remarks in the MLS. So just make sure that anything that you see that they were offering, you repeat that into the contract and ask for it. And that will cover.
Michelle, let me comment on it, okay?
Okay.
If you have a conflict between the MLS and the RPA, the RPA always control, because the RPA is the active in the product of active negotiation between the seller and the buyer, and in court there's a lot more weight than a unilateral promise in the MLS. So when there's a conflict, our RPA always controls. So you have to put that in writing, and that's the essence of the statute of fraud in real estate. Jeffrey, does it answer your question?
Yeah, he has thumbs up.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other items that anybody would wish to discuss, since we have a little bit of time? Or questions? There's one in the chat. Let me pull it up. Okay, thank you. Okay.
I do have something to add, but it has no relevance to our training today, but so I'll wait till everybody has their questions asked.
I don't see any comments, so go ahead.
Okay.
Ruben.
I don't know if everybody is aware of the new program out, but if you're not, there is a new program out that's called the Dream Loan. What it does, it gives the borrower 20% down payment. So basically, the borrower doesn't come in with any down payment. They might have some closing costs, but that's about it. And it's a very, very good program. There is an equity share that's involved and stuff, but it's a good way for a borrower right now to have more buying power and to purchase a home. So if anybody has any needs any information on that, I'm going to be sending out a flyer momentarily, let's say in the next half hour. And if you have any questions, feel free to call me. But it just rolled out, I think, about a week ago. But it's a good way for you to reach out to your buying prospects and see if they're want to go back into the market and purchase. Okay.
Yeah, as Ruben said, the only catch is that you have to share the appreciation with the lender. In other words, if the real estate appreciate 20%, and then you have to sell it at the end of the 1 year, and the appreciation 20%, then you have to share the 20% appreciation with the lender. And then the first year is more, the second year will be a little bit less, and the third year will be even lesser. So it's a scaled, sharing of appreciation with the lender. So you have to read it carefully, make sure that you have make a prudent decision regarding that choice. As you may not want to share your appreciation with the lender. Okay.
Would that be for the life of the loan?
Yes, for the life of the loan. But usually after the 5th year, then you don't need to share anymore. I think at the end of 5th year, because the scaling at the end of the 5th year is very minimal already. So
there,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, there are some restrictions and requirements like FICO scores. It has primary residence only, first-time home buyer only. But the good thing is that 20%, you don't have to borrow the 20%. You could do 10, and then the equity share is less. But let's just say, for instance, you do the 20%, you borrow the 20%, and then they give you a loan for 80%. You don't pay on the 20%. It's a silent second, in a sense. When you do sell the property, that's where you're going to have to pay back the 20% plus the appropriated equity share. But nonetheless, it's a great tool for someone to get in and purchase a home with almost zero, well, actually zero down, but minimal out-of-pocket cost. And it also helps them qualify for a little bit more buying power because they're not paying on the second. It's a silent second, so that they won't pay any mortgage on the second, just on the first. Peter, do you know if this carries MI, or is MI, there's no MI?
what is that? I'm sorry.
Do you know, one of the things that I haven't confirmed is if this type of loan comes with MI, or is it waived?
For what am I?
Mortgage insurance.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I'll find out. I'll find out for sure. But it's still a good program. At the very least, it's worth a call to your buyer's prospect, and have a discussion with them. They might change their mind.
Ruben, Gustavo said he checked on it and the answer is no. Is that correct, Gustavo?
Yeah.
Yeah, he checked.
So
Yeah,
there you go. No mortgage
No mortgage
insurance.
insurance. Okay.
So that's a great program. So just trying to give you guys all the tools that you guys can possibly use to navigate through these times right now. Okay.
and we
I'll be
have an
sending-
agent that's already in escrow with the loan program, Sylvia. She just typed to us. That's excellent. Congratulations.
That's fast.
Thank you.
Good, Sylvia. Good job.
Great job, Sylvia. All right.
Thanks.
I'll be sending that out. You can contact me, or you can contact ClearPoint Mortgage or your favorite lender. Find out the particulars about it first, and then contact your prospects. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, guys, I think that concludes our training for this week. Michelle, you have anything to add? Peter, you have anything to add?
No, I don't.
No, just have a good weekend, everybody.
Yeah. It's good.
All right, guys, enjoy the sun.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Have a nice weekend.
Bye.
Bye.